In recent weeks, headlines really exploded with this news. The U.S. government taking a 10% equity stake in Intel. We're talking about $11 billion here.
Huge number.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not just the number. It's a bombshell that's really ignited a fiery debate.
Absolutely. You see arguments on both sides.
Right. Some say, look, it's a smart move for national security. We need to shore up our defense industrial base. Threats are higher now than they've been since World War II, apparently.
With the argument, yeah, a strategic necessity.
But then you have others, especially conservatives, crying foul. They're warning, wait a minute, direct government ownership in private companies. That isn't capitalism.
Mm-hmm. They see it as a step towards something else entirely.
Like socialism, some are saying, echoing policies maybe you'd see in China or Iran. It feels like a fundamental shift in how America does business.
It really does.
And it raises this critical question. Can we secure our nation without, sacrificing our core economic principles? Can America rebuild its strength by embracing policies that many conservatives are labeling as socialism? Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise and get straight to the facts. Today we're tackling a topic that really hits at the heart of America's economic identity: the government's growing hand in private industry. You sense a stack of fascinating sources detailing these recent, let's say, controversial moves, the urgent reasons behind them, and that fierce conservative pushback.
That's right. Our mission today is to unpack this complex issue. We're going to focus specifically on the critical state of our defense industrial base and the Trump administration's recent interventions, like that Intel deal we mentioned. We'll explore the conservative viewpoints, the serious concerns being raised, and also the alternative, market-based solutions being proposed. We should also touch on the administration's own rationale, just to be balanced.
Definitely. So what does this all mean for you and the future of American enterprise? Let's unpack this. First, let's get to the core problem, the thing driving so much of this discussion.
Right.
Our sources reveal a pretty startling reality: America's defense industrial base.
The foundation of our security.
Exactly. It's facing a serious crisis. And this isn't just talk. It has real-world consequences.
Precisely. One source puts it bluntly. The U.S. is unprepared to meet the wartime demands of the 21st century. We're seeing a shortfall in production capacity, and this is happening when the global threat environment is, more acute than at any point since World War II.
Wow.
And this isn't just rhetoric. We see evidence, right? Our inability to rapidly replenish munitions sent to Ukraine, for example, that leaves our own stockpiles lower. And look at the timelines for naval construction, modernization, painfully long. Building a new destroyer takes years, not months. That creates a real vulnerability.
That is sobering. So how did we get here? What caused this decay in such a vital sector?
Well, the sources point to decades of poor policymaking. It wasn't one single thing. After the Cold War, for instance, there was this big peace dividend idea that led to underinvestment in defense R&D, manufacturing capacity.
Thinking we didn't need it as much anymore.
Kind of, yeah. Budgeting became short-sighted, focused on immediate needs, not long-term readiness. Then you layer on excessive regulations, regulatory drag.
Red tape.
Lots of it. Plus, labor misalignment, not enough skilled workers in key areas like shipbuilding or advanced manufacturing, and market distortions that just made it less attractive for private companies to invest in defense. All these factors together have really eroded the readiness of our defense industrial base. We just can't produce what we need quickly enough to deter adversaries and maintain peace.
Which means what in practice? Longer deployments for equipment.
That, fewer spare parts, and a real vulnerability if, God forbid, a major conflict were to happen.
Okay, so faced with this critical national security threat, many conservatives are offering solutions. Solutions they believe can strengthen our defense industrial base without abandoning free market principles.
Right, and without increasing government spending, importantly. It's about reforming existing systems. You hit on a key point. There's an article, 5 Ways to Restore America's Defense Industrial Base Without New Spending, that outlines these structural reforms. The first one is interesting, output-based grants. So instead of these yearly budget fluctuations that make companies hesitant to invest long-term...
Because the demand isn't stable.
Exactly. The DoD would issue grants. But these grants wouldn't just buy, say, missiles. They'd compensate manufacturers for maintaining latent capacity. Unused capacity.
Latent capacity, what does that mean practically?
Okay, imagine the Navy needs 3 submarines a year, but in an emergency they might need to build 4.
Right.
A grant would cover the overhead costs of keeping that 4th production line ready to go, even if it's idle most of the time.
Ah, I see. So it smooths out the demand, Makes it more predictable for the companies.
Precisely. And it allows for quick production surges when needed without forcing the military to buy extra submarines it doesn't immediately require. Think of it like keeping a fire station fully staffed, ready for an emergency, even if there isn't a fire right now.
Now, these output-based grants, they sound proactive for readiness, definitely.
Yeah.
But some might argue, isn't that still a form of government intervention? Could it distort the market or lead to, crony capitalism if it's not managed super carefully?
That's a fair question, absolutely. Proponents argue that because it compensates for latent capacity rather than just buying extra stuff, it's more targeted. The goal is really to correct a specific market failure. The private sector, on its own, often can't justify the cost of maintaining surge capacity for something that's, rare but nationally critical.
Okay.
So the design emphasizes transparency, specific, measurable capabilities, trying to minimize favoritism.
That distinction helps clarify it. Okay, what's the next reform proposed?
Well, hand in hand with that, you need to tackle the procurement system itself. It's notoriously cumbersome.
You hear that all the time.
So the second point is procurement reform. Shifting away from cost-plus contracts.
Ah, yes, where contractors get paid for their expenses plus a profit margin. So there's little incentive to actually cut costs.
Exactly. It can actually incentivize higher costs sometimes. The proposal is to move towards fixed-price contracts. This model creates really strong incentives for efficiency. If a contractor knows they can pocket the savings by reducing costs, they'll find ways to be more innovative, more efficient.
And taxpayers benefit.
Taxpayers ultimately benefit from better value and hopefully faster delivery. Less waste, more efficiency.
Less waste, more efficiency.
Right.
Makes sense on paper. But having fixed-price contracts sometimes backfired, like leading to corners being cut or companies walking away if costs jump unexpectedly. That could end up delaying critical defense stuff too, couldn't it?
You're right to raise that. There are always trade-offs. Nothing's perfect. The argument for fixed-price contracts emphasizes the need for really robust initial negotiations, clear specs, clear requirements. The idea is to shift the risk and the incentive for cost control back onto the contractor, away from the taxpayer. It forces them to manage projects more tightly from the get-go.
Got it. Manage the risk up front.
Yeah.
Okay, and what about all that red tape we hear about, the bureaucracy slowing everything down?
You're hitting on the third solution. Regulatory modernization. Red tape is a huge hindrance to expansion and innovation in this sector. Laws like the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, they often require these extensive environmental impact studies that can literally stretch for years.
Years? For building a factory?
Years. So that obviously causes huge delays for approving new facilities. A practical remedy proposed is to designate one single agency to sort of shepherd critical defense projects through the whole permitting maze. And here's the kicker. If other agencies don't respond within a specific time frame, applications for these vital facility expansions should be presumptively approved.
Presumptively approved?
Yeah. It streamlines reviews, shortens construction timelines for essential things like shipyards, missile factories. The key phrase, though, is without sacrificing safety. The aim is efficiency, not just rubber stamping.
Okay, cut the bureaucracy, not the safeguards.
Yeah.
That's the idea. But how do you make sure that streamlining doesn't accidentally compromise safety or environmental standards? Presumptive approval sounds risky.
Well, the key is that presumptive approval isn't automatic approval. It puts the burden on the reviewing agencies to act promptly within a reasonable time frame. It's about eliminating those unnecessary, often indefinite bureaucratic delays, not skipping essential checks. The Shepherd agency would still ensure all the requirements are met, just hopefully on a much faster timeline.
That clarifies it. Okay, makes sense. What about the people, the workers needed for this? Are we developing the right skills?
That leads directly to the fourth reform, workforce development. It's a huge issue. Our defense manufacturers face a significant shortage of skilled workers. Welders, machinists, engineers.
The people who actually build things.
Exactly. So rather than just pouring money into programs that maybe don't adequately prepare graduates for these specific roles, states should implement return value formulas for higher education. This basically means tying state funding for colleges and technical schools to how much their students earn after graduation. Texas State Technical College system is often cited as a successful model here.
So if the graduates get good jobs, the school gets more funding.
Essentially, yes. It rewards institutions that actually align their programs with real industry needs. It strengthens the talent pipeline for defense manufacturing and, frankly, increases accountability in education, making sure taxpayer money produces real results.
Aligning education with industry needs and measurable outcomes.
Yeah, that just seems like practical sense. Okay, what's the final piece of this conservative reform puzzle?
The fifth point is prudent tax policy. Our current tax code, according to these sources, often punishes manufacturing.
Yes. By effectively taxing both the investment in equipment and the output from that equipment. It discourages companies from investing in new machinery, new facilities. So the recommendation is for Congress to pass permanent, full, and immediate expensing for equipment, structures, domestic R&D.
Meaning companies can deduct the full cost of those investments in the year they make them.
Exactly. Just like they deduct labor costs now. Proponents stress this isn't a new subsidy, it's more of a neutral tax policy. It encourages capital investment, helps modernize our industrial base, and boosts the competitiveness of U.S. defense firms globally.
Okay, so those are the market-oriented reforms being proposed.
Yeah.
A pathway to bolster defense within, let's say, traditional economic frameworks. But, this is the big but, despite these solutions being out there, our sources highlight a very different and, highly controversial path the administration has been taking. This is where it gets really interesting. The government taking a much more direct hands-on role in private companies. And that sparked a major outcry among traditional conservatives.
Precisely. What's really striking here is this shift towards what some are calling firm-specific deals. The government intervening directly, company by company. The most prominent example, as we mentioned, is the government acquiring that 10% equity stake in Intel, valued around $11 billion.
And President Trump said he paid zero for it. How does that work?
Well, the sources clarify that. The funding was actually converted from money Intel was already set to receive, about $8.9 billion from CHIPS Act grants.
That's the big semiconductor funding lot.
Right. Federal money meant to boost domestic chip making, plus funds from the Secure Enclave program and another $2.2 billion Intel had already gotten. So it wasn't new cash out the door, but a conversion of existing commitments into an equity stake.
Okay, so converting grants to ownership. And this Intel deal, it's not a one-off, is it? Seems like part of a pattern.
That's correct. It looks like a broader trend. The administration also extracted what's called a golden share in U.S. Steel.
A golden share?
Essentially vetoed power over future major decisions. This was part of approving the merger with Nippon Steel. There's also the move where NVIDIA and AMD were strong-armed, according to sources, into giving 15% of their revenue from certain chip sales to China to the government, effectively an export tax. And a big $400 million government investment made the Department of Defense the largest shareholder in MP Minerals. That's a crucial rare earth mineral mine.
Rare earths, essential for tech and defense.
Absolutely. And White House officials like Kevin Hassett have apparently indicated that similar transactions could happen in other industries. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick even floated the idea of the Pentagon owning large chunks of defense contractors such as Lockheed Martin.
Owning parts of Lockheed Martin. Okay, now before we get into the conservative backlash, which sounds pretty intense, let's try to understand the administration's thinking here. What's the rationale for these direct interventions? Why go this route?
Right, it's important to understand that perspective too. While these moves definitely challenge traditional free market norms, the argument for them is essentially pragmatic. Necessary, even in today's global climate. The administration's view seems to be that traditional approaches alone just aren't enough anymore to guarantee national security in these critical sectors.
Because our adversaries aren't playing by those rules.
Exactly. Adversaries like China openly use aggressive state-backed industrial policies. They heavily subsidize their industries to gain global dominance in semiconductors, rare earths, you name it. So in this view, these government equity stakes, these golden shares, they're not seen as abandoning capitalism, but maybe as a necessary evil.
A temporary measure.
Targeted, maybe temporary measures to counter aggressive state actors, secure vital supply chains that have become dangerously dependent on foreign sources, and address specific market failures where maybe the private sector just isn't investing enough on its own to meet really urgent national defense needs. The argument is the stakes are simply too high for a purely hands-off approach right now.
Okay, that lays out the strategic argument. A necessary response to global realities. However, as we said, these actions have ignited a firestorm, particularly among conservatives. They see it as a betrayal of core principles.
Absolutely, and this raises the key question. What is the fundamental concern from that conservative viewpoint? Many, like Senator Rand Paul, are explicit. They call government ownership a step toward socialism. He put it very starkly, asking, if socialism is government owning the means of production, wouldn't the government owning part of Intel be a step toward socialism? Terrible idea.
Pretty direct.
Very. And Senator Tom Tillis echoed that. He compared it to a semi-state-owned enterprise a la CCCP, referring to the old Soviet command economy, and questioned if it aligns with true conservatism and true free market capitalism.
I remember seeing Shark Tank star Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful. He had some really strong words about the Intel deal, too.
He certainly did. O'Leary called it abhorrent and a really, really bad idea. His point was, America has thrived for over 200 years because the government stayed in its lane, while the private sector attracted global capital and rewarded innovation. We let bad companies fail. That's capitalism. That's the core sentiment.
Let the market work, even if it means failure sometimes.
Right. Critics argue these interventions fundamentally abandon free market principles. They believe it leads to inefficiency because, well, government officials aren't market experts. They're less effective than private markets at picking winners and losers. The worry is that decisions become politically rather than commercially driven, and that creates this long, quiet drag on innovation and productivity. It's this fundamental belief that government just isn't designed to run businesses effectively.
So it's not just about the specific deals happening now, but the potential for long-term negative consequences, a slippery slope.
Precisely. There's the concern that this turbocharges lobbying. Suddenly, businesses have a direct incentive to cozy up to the government for these sweetheart deals or exemptions.
Which distorts the playing field.
Exactly. It's seen as wasteful for society. It warps the competitive landscape, often favoring big, politically connected firms over innovative startups. And there's a significant concern about what economists call the interventionist ratchet theory. The idea that one government intervention tends to lead to more and more, slowly drifting towards de facto state control.
One thing leads to another.
Yeah. Ryan Young, an economist, put out a warning. This is a product of both parties forgetting a cardinal rule of politics. Don't give yourself powers you don't want your opponents to have.
Meaning future presidents, Democrat or Republican, could use these same powers.
That's the implication. They could wield these expanded powers, leading to a really unpredictable economic future. Once the government owns a piece of Intel, what stops it from wanting a piece of another company? It sets a precedent. Other companies might then feel they need a similar deal to compete, creating this dependency cycle that's really hard to break.
Okay, so if direct government ownership and this kind of industrial policy aren't the answer from a conservative perspective, what do freedom-minded conservatives propose to address the broader economic challenges, strengthen the nation long-term?
Well, the general thrust is fundamentally limiting government's role and, conversely, unleashing the potential of citizens and businesses. First, sustainable budgeting. Pretty straightforward. Reduce government spending, ensure it grows no faster than population plus inflation, stabilize the economy, avoid debt crises.
Fiscal responsibility.
Right. Second, federal tax reform. Flattening the tax structure, maybe moving towards a consumption-based system. The goal is to strongly encourage saving and investment, and that includes making that full and immediate expensing for capital investments permanent, like we talked about earlier.
Okay, what else though?
Third, education reform. Implementing universal education savings accounts, ESAs, at the state level.
These are the accounts parents can use for private school, homeschooling, tutoring.
Exactly. Empowering parents with choice. The idea is the federal government eventually withdraws from education, letting states and local communities innovate. Fourth, healthcare reform. Focusing on restoring the doctor-patient relationship, lowering costs through things like health savings accounts, HSAs, giving states Medicaid block grants for more flexibility, and deregulating provider markets to foster more competition, hopefully driving down prices.
And the last one.
Finally, competitive federalism. This is the idea of empowering states to lead, compete, and innovate on policy across the board, reducing the federal government's footprint in many areas, letting states find diverse solutions that fit their local needs better.
So boiling it all down, it really seems to come back to a deep-seated belief in free markets and individual liberty, that those are the most powerful engines for prosperity.
Exactly. That's the core belief. Liberty, voluntary exchange, personal responsibility. These are seen as creating the most prosperous, the most dynamic, and even the most moral outcomes for society. No need for central planning or government 5-year plans. As one source put it quite nicely, liberty doesn't need a 5-year plan. It needs guardrails, not gates. Guardrails to protect freedom, not gates erected by the government to control economic decisions.
This deep dive has really laid bare a fascinating and frankly pressing tension, hasn't it? On one hand, this urgent need to restore America's defense industrial base to compete globally.
A real national security imperative.
Absolutely. Versus, on the other hand, these long-held conservative principles of free markets, limited government. We've looked at practical market-aligned solutions that proponents say respect our economic identity. But we've also explored this really controversial path of government equity stakes, direct intervention, that's drawn such sharp criticism as a move towards state capitalism or worse.
And we heard the administration's strategic rationale, too, arguing these interventions are actually necessary to counter global threats in today's world. It's a complex picture.
It really is.
And this debate isn't just theoretical, is it? It's shaping real policy right now, today, with significant implications for our economy, our national security, and ultimately for your financial future. It leaves us with a pretty compelling thought, I think. As we navigate this world of, acute global threats and really intense economic competition, how much will America's unique economic identity shift? And maybe more importantly, what long-term costs might we incur by blurring these lines between private enterprise and government control? It's a fundamental question, really, about the kind of economy we want to build for the next generation. Definitely something worth continually exploring.